Before we begin, just a heads up. In my infinite wisdom, I decided not to do a sound check. The sound quality is bad. The keyboard sounds are bad. I've put in subtitles over the top of myself because I get drowned out constantly. I've split this up into 2 parts. Help. In our last tutorial, we made a character do a simple walk cycle. In this tutorial, we are going to make a character run in, change direction while running, vault over these boxes here Tom Cruise style, use the last bit as a springboard to launch himself upwards and land. So yeah, welcome to Advanced Movement. Alright, so I should cover how I've set up this scene. So we have our boxes here in our regular training stage here, which I believe, because someone asked about it, is TR target. So that's how you get it. For anyone else asking, that's a base thing, comes with Source Filmmaker because it's in TF2. It's the tutorial map for TF2. Anyway, apart from that, we got our boxes here, and I've done something pretty special here. I've decided to set up the scene by doing something people in the biz call layout. And it looks like this. So that's what we're going to be doing. Layout is something that you use to essentially lay out the scene. You pretty much take a character at its absolute basis. You don't really animate much of them at all, just as much so you can get the storytelling and the timing down. If you could probably guess, what we're going to be having is the scout running in, and then harshly turning about 90 degrees, before bouncing down, and then parkour sliding over the top of this, and then channeling that momentum into another jump, and then landing in what I'm pretty sure is going to be a superhero pose, or something along those lines. And because I was indecisive about it, I made 2 cameras, because I'm not quite sure which one was going to be best. Either way, they'll show off the result we're going for. So I enjoy doing layout because not only does it give me a real good overview of my timing and where things should be at certain times, it also looks really stupid. So let's go ahead and hide this scout here. Also, if you click here, you can make things not selectable anymore. He's still selectable somehow. Okay, never mind. It's just when you click on a non-selectable character, you can still select some various IK stuff, but if you do the control method of selecting stuff in the viewport, it won't show up at all. So he's a ghost now. We killed him. So run cycles, or running animations, are overall, they're a lot easier than walking because honestly the faster something is, the easier it is to animate. So what makes up a run? A run is essentially, you know how a walk is controlled falling? A run is controlled jumping. You're propelling yourself using one leg at a time, often to the point where there is no feet touching the ground at some points. So there's a few components to a run, and good boy Richard Williams, the late Richard Williams, has a handy guide on this stuff. From here, we can see that there's a bunch of essential points to a run in 3D. There is your contact. There is your down, but this can also be your down here, the pass. We have the cool pose, this one with the leg outstretched here, and then this one sort of arcing back, and it creates this nice shape. That's in every single one of my run cycles. And then we have one thing where nothing is touching the ground, and then we move into contact. So there's really only a bunch of elements. You've got a contact, you've got a down/pass, you've got a cool pose, and you've got an up. And some run cycles are made up of all of these things, some of them aren't. For instance, the Scout's run cycle, or the one that I use for the Scout, is made up of a cool, it is made up of a up, and it is made up of a contact before we feed directly back into the cool, because that leg just needs to snap around so he can launch up again, because he's a fast boy. And we could use that as reference, or we could do something which is far, far more important, and that is learning to use ourselves as reference. You see, the fact is, when you're animating a human body, you have already the perfect frame of reference, because you're a human, unless you're not, and that's okay, But if you are a human, like me, for instance, and so here's my disgusting rotisserie chicken body here, and I went out and I recorded myself running a bunch, and no matter how hard I tried, I can't run very fast. I can't do this stuff very quickly. But if I look at what I'm essentially made up of, I am made up of a cool pose, and then that's 3 frames before we get to a contact, and then that's about 3 frames before we get to a pass, and we're back around to the cool, and that's the contact, pass, cool, yeah. So doing run cycles is quite simple because it's only really a couple poses that you don't have to worry about, and the spacing between them is usually only 2 or 3 frames. Say for instance, if you have a run that is on 3s, it's going to appear a lot slower. In the Pybro, there is not actually, if I bring it up, the way that the NG actually runs in it is we have a cool pose, and then we have 3 frames to get to the contact. There's no up. And then 2 frames to the pass, 2 frames to the cool pose, 3 frames to that. And sometimes if you're doing slow characters who take a while to get from place to place, we can be looking at 4 or even 5 frames in between poses. Almost like walking, because they're slow. So let's punch them in. For reference, what I'm going to be doing with this scout is he's going to start off in cool. So let's hide this man. He's going to start off in cool. I don't really have to worry about setting keys initially, because as I do this, it's going to set keys for me. So cool, it's always best if you treat this as if he is launching off of this foot, because before all of this has happened, assuming that he's already starting in a running position, we've actually gone through the pass, he's landed already, we've gone through the pass, and now he's launching off on this foot here. So this foot's going to swing around like this, and we're not going to bother with the hands yet, which is going to be fun. We're just going to work on the pelvis and the legs. Mostly because it is really funny to just watch this like mutated Naruto run that happens when you don't animate IK stuff. Alright, 1, 2. And now we move into the up. So as we move into the up, we are, I would say, we're already starting to angle it this way. I'm not entirely sure which way just yet that the body should bend, but yeah. So there we have an up. Nothing is touching the ground, and we may angle this foot this way because we're going to be landing like so. No, that's wrong. Okay. I didn't mention it in the past recording, but now I'm doing the pass pose. So we want to keep this as exact as we possibly can. We're not doing walk cycles or run cycles in the traditional way, mostly because that's going to help us out a lot when we get to this point here, where he has to turn. So yeah, if we just push that ahead there, and push that there, and maybe if we push that forward a bit. I mean, his legs just going like immediately like hit the ground. Like, but we'll make it work. We will make it work. Okay, and this foot comes in about here. Yeah. A lot of what I do tends to be trial and error, which isn't usually the best idea when you're recording something live for people who expect you to be an expert, but in the long run it helps out, I guess. Alright, now we're back into cool. And for this cool, I might actually just do this properly. Someone was saying that they got annoyed that the feet were sinking into the ground. Expect to see that a lot. I don't animate toes for fun. I don't like them. I don't like toes. Alright, and as we're doing that, we're going to launch this way. He's pushing off. He's landed on this foot, and now he's pushing off on this foot. And our thing is already on the fritz, so let's figure out what's going on there. Yeah. So, fun little IK tidbit here. These things here, poles, you want to keep them in the direction you want the thing they control to be. So this is the knee joint, and sometimes I see this, sometimes people sort of do IK stuff and they go like, why is my leg freaking out like this? It's because it's way too close and it can't calculate what's supposed to be going on, because this controls the direction which the knee is going in. Source Filmmaker is usually very good with this, but sometimes there can be issues. So we got ourselves a cool, and then let's move into an up, and then we'll just review it and see how we're going. So that's about exact. If you want to know how things are going, check your position X, and that'll tell you where there's inconsistencies. So there's inconsistencies right about here. And that should be okay. Hey, just making a quick revision to this. You can see here the x-axis. I'm on the x-axis now. You can see how it's all a straight line. That's the result that you want when you're doing straight ahead stuff like this. And the reason for that is that if it's even a little bit inconsistent, you can see how much of a difference that makes. This dictates your overall speed, and it can become quite apparent if there's inconsistencies, which is why I ask you to line it up like this, because if there is inconsistencies, he can suddenly speed up or slow down in between things. So, yeah. Just a bit of a heads up, that's important. Keep that as straight as possible. That's actually not too bad, which I wasn't expecting. Alright. This leg shoots forwards from the angle like there. It's funny, the scout kind of runs like he's stomping down the way that I animate it. I'm not sure it's supposed to be doing that. But now, it's too straight. There we go. Just push off with that foot there. Alright. Now I'll just do another thing, and there's something weirdly inconsistent about that. Just check. Alright. I mean, I'm not quite sure why I'm doing that right now, because at some point in time, I'm not going to be able to check that at all. I'll find, like, I'm going to have to, like, fly by numbers, basically, when I get to around about here, where it turns, and we're facing this axis now. Unless... Yep, yeah. So this widget here is never actually local to your character. It is always local to map X, Y, and Z space. So, whoops! You better be counting on these absolutely brilliant motion trails for everything, because you at least can do that. So you've got that ball in your court, but you've pretty much got nothing else. It's already doing the thing where it turns everything into linear. Everything hurts. Okay. just bring that back into the pass. So yeah, once I've done this, I'll move into the next cool, and we'll essentially have a solid loop. Wait, what are we doing? Why did I do that? Okay. How is this gonna work? Let's have a look. What the fuck is that? Hello? How's that gonna work? I almost get the feeling it's not fast enough. No, it's definitely not fast enough. Okay, well this will allow us to fix a bunch of problems. Alright, so let's increase this a bunch and increase the width to like this bit here. So about that range is what I'm going for now. I'm trying to match that up across the board. We goofed, but this will be a fairly simple goof to fix because we didn't commit to it, which is good. That's why I like doing this way, even though I probably shouldn't. Just animating the legs and the pelvis, because it is very easy to fix up this kind of stuff. It's not permanent, you know. And if you mess up, it's just 3 things. Easy. Okay. Now I'll grab all of you. Spline you and see how that general run is going to look. A little... Ooh. Ooh, that can't be right. I was correct, it can't be right. Okay. So yeah, just going through like this. Once we have a general loop, we will be able to commit to the rest of it. And it'll become way quicker, and you won't make as many mistakes. Here's a fun thing. Why don't, instead of doing that, we just straight up almost make that a contact? And just oof. Yeah, because I don't like the way that leg just kind of like falls onto it. It just looks a bit artificial. So we'll just make him stretch his leggy out a bit more. That'll work. Actually, I might just take this position and so that's the high up, that's the down. Make the down a bit more consistent and then make it stronger. This doesn't look like a springboard is the thing, so if I pull that up to about there, yeah, I can line it up, because handy thing I never really took for granted until I've always taken for granted until now. You move splines in the graph editor, and you'll see a handy little black line that'll tell you how to line stuff up. Yeah, it looks a lot better. Stronger down, spring, beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna punch in the rest of this until we get to the important part, which is coming up. That's when you learn how to turn. As it turns out, I only had to animate one more step before we actually got to the point, because I checked my layout boy and he's already turning. He's already started turning. So yeah, we're a bit late on. So let's get into what's exactly going to happen. How does this man turn? Oh, you just think, oh no, it's totally fair. He'll just go this way, right? He'll just go this way, and his legs will go this way, and everything will be fine in the end. There will be no issues with any of this, is what you'd be thinking. So that's fine, you know, he just turns like this. That's how people turn. No, what would actually happen is, because he has all of this force here that is traveling this way, his body's gonna go like this. And then it's gonna go like this. That's him. That's what you've done to him. So how do people turn when they're running then? Well, if you take a look back here, here's another recording of me doing exactly this. So here's me turning. Yeah, that kind of sucks. Okay, well, let's not focus on the running and how, I don't know, I look like a pile of legs, but what you want to pay attention to is just running normally, and then this happens. I push my legs out in front of myself, and I push them out at an angle. I push them out at an angle here, so that when I land here, I'm being cushioned by this, and I don't tip over as much. And then I'm essentially launching myself in this direction rather than in that direction. So it's sort of like, you know how in motocross, when you we've all had enough of that. It's not motocross, it's like professional motorbiking stuff. Whenever they turn corners at high speeds, they like lean super bloody close to the ground on the opposite end so they don't tip over. The human body is also like that. The human body is a motorcycle, is what I'm trying to say. So let's try to put this into the context of what we're animating. So he's just launched himself, and he's launching himself in this direction. Where has he launched himself off from? Perfect. Okay. So he's launched himself in this direction. So it's going to be this foot. And it's going to come out like this. And it's going to turn like this. Because what we want to do here is... Oh, we might just start turning him as well. Because we want him to land like... If I can do it quickly or not. I'm not very good at timing out my reveals. Okay. We want him to land like this. So he's still going like this. Oh, he's probably turned his pelvis at this point. He's still launching himself in this direction. Except now this foot has said, nah bruh, you land in this way. And we can have our contact down be like this. Meanwhile, this leg's over here, doing the pass. Not there. Please God, not there. There we go. Now he's passed down into here, and he is primed and ready for launching himself in this direction. Maybe a bit less rotation. And then when he lands on the next foot, he's going to launch himself from this direction to this direction to this direction. That's how you turn when you run. So you're looking pretty schmick so far. I might just lean a bit further in. And then we'll launch ourselves in this direction. Looks a bit stupid, so let's make it look a little better. Because this is supposed to be the cool pose. There we go. That doesn't look too bad. And now what's going to happen is, as you saw, during the up, that leg's going to come across his body like that and connect probably here. Just depends on how fast he's going to be moving. He is turning. We need to slow down when turning. Yeah, so I want this leg to come across the body like this. Preferably in a cooler manner. Never mind, that's cool enough. I'll take it. We'll have this leg do like, I don't know, fun scout thing. Scout just looks like that. He does that in game. His legs are made of jelly. It's hilarious. Let's check to see how that's looking. Ooh, yeah! I don't know, we got a nice pose going here. Just overall. Looks so shifty. So now, considering that was the way the foot was going, I can essentially step in here. I might just straighten that up. This leg can like swing around because we've got all the weight from the jump here is being cushioned by this foot. See if that fixes it. It does fix it. Thank you, Source Filmmaker. Not in that direction, more like in this direction, because we've still got, like, I would say another 2 steps before we've equalized our, before we've, settled back into a straight run. So for the next couple minutes, I'm just essentially punching in poses. Right now, I'm doing the cool pose, and then after that, I move into the next contact. Once I've done that, I then start playing through it a bunch because I just start eyeballing it and trying to figure out what I could essentially improve. Looking at your animation in motion is a really good way of seeing what could actually improve. Since this is all spline stuff, it's pretty easy to go through and see where things can improve. See, right about here, I'm like, okay, I could maybe tweak that a bit so it would follow that arc a bit more. And once I've done that, I then go, wait, he's not turning soon enough, so I go back to the start of the turn, and I start to turn his torso a bit more, so it's a bit more choreographed. So once I've done that, and it's looking pretty alright, I then start punching in more poses. Since we're now getting to the end of the turn, with each pose and each step, I'm gradually bringing the scout's center of gravity back into like a central position, so he's traveling in more of a straight line, and I elaborate more on that soon. I'm using his feet to essentially push his center of gravity back into like a central position because I'm now getting him to travel in a straight line again. Alright, so our layout's already ahead of us, but that's okay because the bastard cut the corner! That's fine, we'll look better. So as we're coming up to finishing the turn now, in order to sort of equalize the speed, because he's still very much going in this direction, I'm going to have this foot come out and launch us back in the opposite direction to sort of cancel stuff out. So that'll be the up, up will be traveling still in this direction. Because people can't change direction mid-air. That's like a dumb thing they can't do. So we're going to have this leg come out here. And we're going to fix up the knee by doing that. It's not going to be a contact, is it? No, it's not. Okay. Yeah. What this should do is essentially equalize stuff, because now we're going to be launching ourselves in, instead of constantly going in this direction, by going down on this foot, we'll be able to launch ourselves back in a regular direction. Yeah, you can only really launch yourself left or right, and it's how strong you do it that determines your direction. I don't think that's accurate, but that's the line of thinking we're applying right now. Oh, jeez, that foot placement kind of sucks, actually. That's good once we launch ourselves in a regular direction, because then we're going to have to deal with another thing. How are we going to slow ourselves down enough in order to get to this box? In order to don't smash our kneecaps into this box when we reach it. Right, so at our current pace, Scout is going to smash his kneecaps into this thing, because he's traveling too fast to be able to really do anything with his hands or his body. So, let's try to figure out how to stop, because one of the most important things that you'll find about moving very fast is that eventually you're going to have to stop moving very fast. So, let's go over the essentials of what we want here in terms of how we want this guy to slow down. We essentially want his feet to end up around about here, so that we have enough time for like an anticipation or like a leap into a crouch that will allow us to jump up onto the box. But currently our strides are super large, so this foot's going to land here, and the next foot's going to land here, and then he's going to smash into that. So we want to reduce the amount of steps between it, and we want to slow down this hurtling meteor of like sheer performance that is this man's pelvis. And the best way to do that is, again, looking at how you would do it. So let's take a look at more reference that I prepared earlier. So I'm here right now. I'm at the, look, at this point in time, I'm running towards a wall, so I kind of have an incentive to slow down. But what's happening here, if we ignore that and just assume this is a regular walk because this one kind of sucks, that's not important. The important part is this. I shoot my leg out in front of me like it's a regular contact. This leg here is already following behind, because when you want to slow down, you want to be taking as many steps as possible to essentially put as much an obstacle in the way of like the movement of the pelvis. See, right as I've done that, this foot's already hitting the ground, and then this one's already moving, and it's hitting, and I don't know what I'm doing there, but you know, we've seen what's important, so that's all good. So going back here, what's going wrong here? I think the slowdown should actually happen around about here, in order to get him to stop. So let's start to move this leg outwards a bit more, and start to get this man's to stop. So yeah, we still have like the launch in that direction, which is important. This knee is misbehaving. Why are you doing this to me? Stop it. We still have the launch in the other direction, that I mentioned earlier, in order to sort of straighten out a trajectory. But now, if we look at our cool pose, I actually don't really want that to be much of a cool pose anymore. This leg is already outstretched. It's ready to hit the ground. Because when we're moving at this kind of speed, you almost want that. So this is almost going to be a contact now. Please stop doing this. So let's go in. We're still traveling at this amount of speed, but now we have this leg in front of us. Bam. Stopping us in our tracks. Might just push this one out a bit. Just because it looks nicer. We're going to have much more of it down here, as we're already going for it. And now this foot is already traveling to here. We're already at the pass. You really want to put as many steps as possible in the way of you and whatever the heck you're about to collide with when you want to slow down a run. So I might take some of these and stick them further out in front. I haven't rotated the pelvis much at all yet, but as we're doing this, I might just start to angle it back. Give us more of an appearance of everything slowing down. So I'm thinking here we might actually come back this way. Because now we have all this trajectory. Like, we did it so that we could push this in front of ourselves to stop. And now we've done that, we have all of this stuff at the top that's now going to throw itself forwards, because that's how follow-through works. And it's good, because now we're going to be able to feed this, if I maybe do a 3 on here, into an anticipation. For the next part, which is going to be the mantle. We've got a fun shape going on here. Doing the final pose here, I take this pose here and I pull it back so these become a 2, because I want to make space for a 3. Because I want it to be kind of slow in, so by making it a 3, I'll get it to the sort of speed that I want. And then I go to the previous pose and I pull it back, so it's a little bit faster in. And then I simply pull this foot forwards, so we're in a perfect crouch position and we're ready to jump. And we should be good. So now Scoot's got the booty and he's ready to rumble, essentially. Let's see how that kind of looks. I don't like that 3 at all. Let's just push that back to a 2. There we go, that works. Like, he's still forward, he's still got like plenty of forward momentum, but now he's prepared himself for what he's about to go through. So now, let's do the arms. Arms, fairly simple, just your obvious standard stuff. Okay, so since I didn't really explain my process for arms when I was recording this, what it essentially is it's a more extreme version of the animation we did for the arms in the walk cycle, where if a leg is in front, the arm is at the back, and if the leg is at the back, the arm is out in front, because it is essentially counterbalancing what's going on. And what I'm trying to work out here, when I'm paused here for a bit, is I'm trying to figure out when I should have the more extreme arm all the way back or arm all the way forward. And here I decide that in the cool pose, I have a less extreme version. So it's sort of in the middle, but not really. And then when I have the down, or the contact, then I am essentially doing the more extreme either pull back or pull forwards. Because that's essentially what goes into an arm animation. Is you just kind of want to make it look as good as possible, and that's honestly quite subjective. I just try to rely on really dynamic shapes but that can vary. Here you can see we've gone into the down or the contact, and now I'm experimenting with trying to create the kind of dynamic shape or the kind of swing that I want the arms to have, and I very quickly realized that I'm going to have to use the shoulders for this. A lot of people tend to ignore the shoulders when doing animations. Don't ignore the shoulders. It's kind of, you think you can cut that corner, but honestly you really can't. Shoulders are imperative in creating really interesting and dynamic shapes with your arms, if you get what I mean. I also have to make use of my IK poles for my elbows in this as well. Those are going to be constantly adjusted throughout, because when it comes to arms, you do need to use poles quite a bit. For legs, with Source Filmmaker and the way it calculates it, you are lucky if you don't have to, because it handles that stuff pretty damn well. But with arms, you do have to make use of your IK poles to get your elbows pointing in the direction that you want, because oftentimes it can't really figure it out, even if you are using your shoulders. See, at this point in time, in the down, this is the down, not the contact, I am going to use it as the arms pass pose, so for both the arms and the legs, this will be the pass pose. So you can see as I'm doing this, I'm adjusting the hands to sort of recover from the follow-through in their previous positions, and adjusting the IK poles and adjusting the shoulders to more of a neutral pose. I want to put the arms and shoulders more in the middle, more of like a central neutral thing. So now, since the left leg is brought back, I can bring the left arm forwards. And I'm essentially trying to create something that will lead into the pose you saw on the previous arm when the right leg was back. And as I'm doing this, I'm adjusting the shoulder. With the shoulder movements you want, when the arm is forwards, the shoulder is forwards, and when the arm is back, the shoulder is back. Preferably, it's also good if when the arm is back, the shoulder is raised, and when the arm is forwards, the shoulder is lowered. So you can kind of get a really nice counterbalance, because if you didn't gather that from the walk cycle tutorial, the arms and the legs, the upper body and the lower body, are almost constantly, when running or walking, they are doing the opposite of each other. Okay, so that's essentially that's what we're gonna do. And do that. Okay, so what I mean by that is you only really need to figure out as many poses as there are movements in your running animation or walking animation. Because once you've done that, you are essentially just punching them in on top of the corresponding leg pose. So there are 3 leg poses in my running animation, and that essentially means we only really need 3 arm poses, and then we just mirror them on each side as we did with the leg animation. You could also just punch in these arm poses alongside the leg poses, but since I really wanted to focus on the legs and the running and the control of the center of gravity, I decided to sort of do this separately. As I'm playing this back, I'm going to realize that after I put in all these poses, I don't really like it. Okay, quick addendum. I don't really like this. So here's what I think I'm going to do. I don't like how quickly it leaves the poses, so I'm just gonna really massively exaggerate how quickly it snaps from that to that by essentially removing as much of this center position as I can, and then just giving it tons of follow through or tons of secondary. Boop. Okay, so to elaborate on this, what I'm doing with these new pass poses is I'm reducing the time it spends in the middle and moving it back. So for instance, this hand, its previous frame, it was at the back, so by pulling it back, I am holding onto that pose a little bit longer. And now, when it needs to move to the front, it now has a greater distance to travel in the same amount of time, so it's going to move faster. So it will essentially, I get to hold on to the previous pose, and then it will snap to the next pose. That looks a little better. Maybe if I just made that pose super lax instead of that. Like that. So now it just swings like a metronome into this next part. Let's try that. That looks a lot better, actually. Okay. Oh my god. Okay! Oh my god! We're getting up to the point where he starts to slow down. So what we're going to do is probably abandon the usual structure that we have for arm swinging, and we're probably just going to make him push his arms in front of himself to sort of ready himself for what's going to happen. I'm thinking this arm is going to swing downwards like this in preparation for this. This arm here is probably going to sort of maybe go down a bit before coming back up. I don't have a webcam on right now, but when I animate, I usually sort of act through what's going to happen. Because, as usual, you are your own best reference, so take advantage of that while you can. Yeah, that's actually going to work. Okay, good. So what's going to happen from here? The plan is he's going to jump up, and if we saw what we did with the layout that is there, he's going to grab the box with his left hand. The body is going to be in a position to launch up, which it already has. The hands just needs to touch it, and so the scout can use his hand as a pivot point to sort of pivot his pelvis around. You know what? I might just say, stuff it. You're here now. What stuff it, you're here now means is I am going to the last relevant pose of this particular part of the animation, and then just moving the hands right to it, which will move them in a straight line from where they were to there, but then I then go alongside it. I go in intervals of 2 between it, and then I adjust it as I go. This can be quite an efficient technique, and it's actually got a lot in common with how pose-to-pose actually operates, which is the more industry-friendly animation workflow. It's more similar to 2D. Yep, he's ready. Look at him. I mean, that'll do, I guess. No, that should actually be more forwards this way. Oh, I know what I'll do. Yeah, push this in front a bit more. And then I'll have it like swing back a little bit. So we'll end up with this. Already at here. Yeah, let's try that. Looks a little sudden in some places, like that's way too sudden. So we can just soften that out a bit. Yeah. So just like the arms, I'm going to do the spine as 3 poses that correspond to the 3 poses of the run cycle, but because I'm only animating the rotation value of the spine and not the position, I'll be able to copy this over and over again, and assuming everything's lined up properly, which I think it is, everything should be consistent and nothing should be out of time. So let's figure out what's going on here. I'll say that when he pushes off, he'll actually like push himself down a bit, and then in the next one sort of come up a bit here. I just needed to figure it out just based on like the inertia and how everything was traveling. I do something interesting when I'm doing overlapping and secondary animation when it comes to things like walk and run cycles. Say frame 1 of this is starting in cool pose. In order to figure out how the spine should be moving in frame 1, I often take it ahead to a similar point in the next bit of the cycle, about 3 poses later. And then from there I can look at the previous pose and how it reaches the cool pose, and I can kind of figure out how the body's movement will be affecting the spine, and then from there I can figure out how to create the ideal spine pose for frame 1. So he's actually pushing himself down here, and then lifting himself up again. And I'll say that's going to be the most... Actually no, let's say that's the most. And then we have this as like the medium between the two. Let's make that a more visible thing so we can see what's going on here. Quick addendum here. When overlapping in the spine for runs, it's good to have this general kind of shape in your graph editor. Now the shape should be about as long as the poses in your run or walk, so we've only got 3 here before it starts to loop. But it could have 4 or even 5 if you want to be a slow man. So if you look here, there is an extreme down, there is an extreme up, and there is a pose in the middle that essentially could exaggerate either the up or the down, or it could be in the middle. Now, having the point in the middle makes it move smoothly sort of from up to down. If you were to push it up here, it will exaggerate the up and hold on that a bit longer, which makes him sort of snap to the down a lot quicker, which makes him look a bit heavier. If you move it up to here, however, it will hold a bit more on the down before snapping to the up, which is good for characters that are a bit lighter. And just as an extra thing, say if we were to take this pattern and copy and paste it to the neck and see how that would work, this is effectively how you overlap different elements. This is probably a better demo than I could give in the walk cycle tutorial, but you'll notice now both of them are moving at the same time. If I were to take this one on the neck and pull it forwards one bit more, you'll start to see that it's reacting a bit more to the spine, and if I pull it this way, I can properly demonstrate what's going on here. Because this point in the spine has already begun the extreme down. I mean, let me just go. This point in the spine has begun demonstrating the extreme down at the same time as this is currently still in the middle of the up. And so when this now yanks upwards, this part of the head is being pushed downwards. And then as this part is recovering from being yanked upwards, this part of the head is getting pulled upwards almost by the force of the body here being pulled upwards. And so it's up and down and up and down and up and down. So yeah, that's effectively how overlapping works in theory. That's how follow through and overlapping works. Yeah, that'll work. cool offset on that if I want to, but no, that's actually working pretty decently. No, it's not. This will be the median. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that could work. Future note here, so if your overlapping isn't really turning out too well, I would suggest adjusting which pose of the run should have the extreme up and which one should have the extreme down, and then maybe playing around with the middle bit until you get a result that you want. Is it just me, or does that make it look like he's running faster? Okay, that worked. And now we'll just do the head, I guess. We just want to keep him straight ahead. Now, I'm not really focusing on follow through here. I'm just going through each pose and making sure the head is staring straight ahead. Excellent. And now his head's in a position where he's not always looking down. Oh god, what the heck is going on with his head? Hello? Why? Alright, maybe we'll make that a bit less extreme. And we can just use the playhead slider for that. And pull them all closer to that spline. That looks fine. Alright. And that's the end of part 1. I hope by now you have a decent-ish understanding of what makes up a run. How to control and stop momentum when you have it, and a lot of other assorted things. Up next are the general concepts behind body mechanics, and if you didn't think there were enough future notes in this one, oh boy. I think by now I've realized that this is definitely not going to be a instructional paint by numbers, move the scout's left leg 5 inches and make a keyframe kind of tutorial. It's more about me trying to explain why things are the way they are and things you should be thinking about when animating. If I didn't explain something concisely, or if there's something I covered that you're kind of confused about, don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below.